Hello listeners, my name is Jarvis Cocker and I'm here to tell you, you're listening to Light in the Attic. Stay mellow.
This is Matt Sullivan from Light in the Attic. I'm here with Charles Bullen and Charles Hayward of This Heat, amongst many other things. And it's a pleasure to be here with you guys. We're at Cafe Auto in London, England. How you guys doing?
Good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking the time to chat. We've been, as both of you know, but to tell people listening, we've been reissuing the records that you guys made a while back for This Heat over the past...
A bit of a while,
yes. That you guys made back in kind of the late 70s, early 80s. And 3 more of which are about to be reissued in the coming months.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're... Patrick McCarthy at Light in the Attic was kind of the chief person turning us onto the records and kind of leading the charge. But we should kind of mention you guys have been reforming in a live thing called This Is Not This Heat. And the first show you guys played was here at Cafe Auto in 2016?
Yep, February the 12th.
Yep. And what is it like been to play live again together in these songs?
It's been loud.
It's been incredibly. It's like a learning thing. It's a big learning curve. There's the space between then and now, and when it's like reissuing the records, that's fantastic, and it brings it back into the present day, and we're very, very grateful, and we did a beautiful remaster with the engineers, and it's just good. But then when we start doing it live, then there's this thing where there's this 40 years in between, and
35, yeah. Well, it depends where you count from the start or the end.
Yeah. It depends whether you start from the start or the end.
Right.
40 or 35 years, yeah. So there's, like, for instance, the thing that most expresses it for me is that there's the chorus on Cenotaph is "History repeats itself," and there we are 40 years later doing this again. Mm-hmm. And it feels like when the song was constructed, it was like at the end of one iteration of the loop, and now, and we thought, oh, that was there, and then we find that we're inside the loop, and so then you're singing the loop, and it's only because you've got the 40 years in between that you can even stand back and see that's this thing, and it's really sort of like, wow, we were singing that it just goes round and round and round, and hey, we're proving it. We aren't proving it. The planet is proving it. Mm-hmm. So on that level, all this, the classic sense of irony, as opposed to just a piss take or a pastiche or something like that, a real sense of irony, which is one moment and then another moment. I mean, it's just to the max. Mm-hmm. And plus, we've got this improvisational thing going on, so that always brings it into the present. It's just like an amazing thing.
It seems the music, from my perspective, and I think many people's perspective, it's completely timeless and also feels kind of still the future.
Yeah.
Did you guys, was that your thought in making it at the time? Did you guys see like anyone would care about this music 40 years later, or do you guys...
I was thinking about this the other day. We knew that we were sort of out on a limb, as you say. We weren't part of any movement, or even though we get classed as post-punk and all that stuff. All this stuff about years ahead of their time and all this stuff. Apparently we were ahead of our time, because the amount of respect and interest we get now compared to the time sort of shows that, yeah.
I think also when we were making it, we had certain strategies. We sort of almost did it as without even talking about it. So we would very rarely use the most recent bit of technology, because the most recent bit of technology means that, I'm just going to use some names that lots of people might have heard. If you've heard Culture Club, Spandau Ballet, even Scritti Politti, they're all using the same sort of drum sounds, and it's because they're all some of those bands even would wait 3 months so that the Linn drum was over here as opposed to only in the States, and then they re-clue in their stuff with the MIDI tracks, the Synthi, just so that they were sounding like now.
Yep.
But then what that means is they will then automatically sound like then within about 5 years.
Yep.
So we never really went down that road. The only time we did that was with the version of 24-track loop on Blue and Yellow.
Yeah, all those bands you mentioned, though, that's all post this.
Yeah, I'm just using that as for instance, because it's very obvious.
That technology is post this.
Yeah, but it's also, but that sort of thing.
We used lots of toys and things we found in junk shops, and well, obviously Charles had his, Ludwig drum kit. I had my Fender Telecaster, but apart from that, it was a lot of old bits of junk. I mean, I had a really old viola from a junk shop, what we call junk shop. I don't think you call them that in America, do you?
Thrift store.
Yeah. And a beaten up old clarinet. Gareth inherited that organ from Dave Jarrett, who was in quite some with Charles.
Okay.
Yeah, sewing machine lids, old saucepans, chocolate tins,
toy organs.
Yeah.
There's loads of those two little toy organs on all those tapes we've been listening to.
Endless toy organs.
It sounds just like the world's still catching up to it. In a good way.
Yeah, I mean, Twilight Furniture, I always thought of that as being somewhere in the future after everything had collapsed, and it was like a variation on what would be possible with next to nothing. So in a way, even when it starts when it's a lower technology as opposed to an advanced use of technology, even that was sort of about the future.
And what about, talk a little more about the live show. So you guys have coming up Chicago and Philadelphia and a few other American cities. I mean, it's got to be, again, surreal playing these songs, but what do you expect out of Americans listening to these shows? What do you hope to happens at these gigs? Just good.
Well, the response has been very, very. It's been beautiful to get this energy, and the energy's coming in a two-pronged attack, as far as I can see. There's the thing which is the people who were around when we made it, and then there's the generations that have got hip to it in the time since. And I've been working with some of the younger crowd, and they approach it in a less nostalgic way, and yet the other people are approaching it from a point of view of music as memory. I've never really got involved in this idea of music as memory before. I'm just realising the extreme power of this.
Yeah.
It just really communicates with people because people have already embedded it in, and then you bring it to life,
yes.
And it's already there.
Yeah.
So we're getting these two reactions in the audience in this beautifully subtle way. It's not like binary or whatever the word would be. It's not either or, and it's not even one thing part of the audience is doing one and one part. But we're getting this totality, which is like, wow.
That's beautiful.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I can't describe how it's. I'm almost in tears now thinking about it.
That's great.
It's really just
I
fantastic.
think the stateside shows should be. I think they'll follow that same thing. I think there's people who probably saw you guys play maybe in the UK years ago and have waited a long time to see it again. Plus, a lot of people.
I'd be surprised if there won't be any people in America who've seen the band.
There
before.
might be a few at the shows. Some
Maybe.
Brits who maybe live in
I
stateside.
have found it very nice, you know, when people have come up at gigs in, say, in Zurich, you know, someone comes up and says, yeah, I saw you in Geneva, sorry. Yeah, I was there in Geneva in 1981. And there was a woman there in Belgium who'd been at a gig in 79. And yeah, it's great that, you know, those people have, for all these years, like they were at that gig, they remember that gig with great affection, and they, you know, they hear that we're coming now and they can't wait to come and see us again. And
yeah, that's really beautiful again.
There's another guy we met at the very most recent gig who we'd seen in the audience at like Denmark and in London and in Ghent and in Holland.
Well, the American guy?
No, the English guy with the soft cap. And he told me that he started getting into music because he's about 10 or 12, 15 years younger than us. He got into music in about 1983 or 1984, and then one of the first things he got into was this scene, but we just finished. So he was like in this weird hinterland of being of the older generation, but never quite seeing it. So that was quite an amusing conundrum as well. That happens as well.
He's been waiting like 35 years.
He's been waiting 35 years, and if he'd been born, you know, 3 years earlier, he would have seen it, maybe.
And people who came to the gig here at Cafe Otto, I remember someone saying to me, I never thought I would ever get the chance, you know, like they heard the records and they didn't think they would get the chance to see, you know, a live performance of that music. You know?
And what is the band? You guys talk a little about the other band members of the live show right now. Who will be on the upcoming US tour?
Daniel Sullivan playing bass and keyboards and a bit of viola. Frank Bing playing some drums and percussion. Alex Ward.
Clarinet and guitar. James Sedgwick's guitar.
That's it, yeah.
And the two of you, of course.
And the two of us.
Yes. One thing I was curious about is, like, on a whole other note, is what have you guys been listening to lately, personally? New stuff, old stuff? I'm always curious what is on your guys' turntables or phones or what you enjoy.
I heard Derek Bailey, Tony Williams and Bill Laswell from 1995.
Mentioned that to me. I was like, really?
And I think that is pretty amazing.
Derek Bailey, Tony Williams
and Bill Laswell.
It's like an ECM record, or what?
No, it's one of Laswell's records.
Okay, wow.
It makes
someone mentioned it like a few months ago to me, and I was like, really? Because I'm like a Tony Williams completist. I want to hear everything that Tony Williams played, even the sort of pretty crap stuff he did, like whatever at the end of the 70s into the 80s or whatever.
With Wayne Rooney and all that sort of thing.
Wayne Rooney. It's football.
Well, not Wayne Rooney. What's his name? The trumpet player.
Yeah, I know who you mean.
Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I got his name wrong. I thought of him as a footballer. But Ken Rooney. Oh, I can't remember now. Anyway, imitation second quintet, really. You talk about that stuff. Anyway, Tony Williams, Laswell, and Derek Bailey.
I'll look that up. That sounds great.
It's great because.
So is it time? I mean, Tony's playing time.
He's playing time, but he's also renegotiating how to deal with that thing. It's just like an amazing record. Pauline Oliveros and Roscoe Mitchell. There's a duo, a 10-minute duo of them live. I don't think it's on record. It's on a CD, a YouTube clip.
Yeah.
Transcendental, that.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I listen to so much stuff. You know, because of the internet, I hear so much music that it's almost impossible to. Well, I did hear a band recently, which is, you know, they're quite mainstream. A band called Khruangbin, who I quite like.
You mentioned them to me at the barbecue.
Yeah, it's just great. Bass, guitar, and drums. Quite stripped down, gentle sort of thing.
Yeah, I like their records. Good. Did you mention, Charles, last time I met you a few years ago, about David Z?
Yeah, you said you checked that out.
I found that record.
So you're not going to re-release it?
I would not be opposed to it. I just haven't looked deep into it, but I've listened to records. Actually, we played some records the other night at Rough Trade East here, and I brought that record with me, and it's just...
You found a nice copy?
Yeah, online, of course. I could not find it, and Charles H., you should check that out.
It's a Tropicalia thing.
No, it's from...
No, that's Tom's that you're thinking of. David, so you remember the Angolan music that I found in Portugal all those years ago? Yeah.
Beautiful music. And the album cover I love too, which has a great vibe to it. Is he still alive?
No, he got shot like a couple of years after that record.
Wow, okay. He was an activist, and the government wasn't.
Well, it was all that. A lot of that music from Angola at that time was MPLA music.
Yeah.
It was revolutionary music against the Portuguese occupation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic record. Yeah, thank you for turning me on to that. That was really cool.
I'm enjoying the legacy of Jay Dilla more than I'm enjoying necessarily what Jay Dilla made. I think there's a whole. It's almost like there's the surface, and then there's this stuff down at the atomic structure of rhythm, and I think a lot of people have learned from what Dilla did, and they're starting to learn to play like that. And I think some of that is really revolutionary, actually, sort of like deeply radical.
Yeah.
And some of the live things I've seen of like sweaty clubs with really quality players like Thundercat and people like this, but in these like dives, it's like, oh, this new beyond hip hop thing is connecting with the whole New York loft free jazz thing as well.
Yeah, Thundercat and like Flying Lotus and Kamasi Washington. There's some really great jazz players.
And some of the drummers, Chris Dave.
Yeah, I don't know if I know him. Is he the drummer on some of that stuff?
He's on some of that stuff,
Okay.
and then even people like very white guys like from like Romford or something, like Pino Palladino.
Oh yeah.
It's sort of like when he's in the right milieu,
Yep.
he becomes like so fantastic.
The bassist Pino.
Yeah, I mean, I when he was on the stuff in the 70s and 80s, it was like, oh, for God's sake, turn that off. And when he was playing with that crew, that
well, D'Angelo he plays with.
Well, on that
amazing.
record,
Yeah,
he's
amazing.
like, whoa.
Yeah, Black Messiah is like my favorite
Flip.
on records. Yeah,
But it's like there's a surface, and then there's this thing underneath, which is the instability of the rhythmic structures, which are also stable. Amazing.
Yep. Timeless. So good.
Yeah, it's
so good.
really, really interesting stuff.
Do you guys?
One of my favourite discoveries in recent months is, I'm afraid I can't remember the name of the band, but they're from Albania, and it's being recorded by Joe Boyd. You know Joe Boyd?
Yeah. Producer.
It's the album's called "At Least You Could Wave Your Handkerchief at Me" or something like that.
Oh, wow.
It's my favourite, so-called world music album I've heard for years, because it's really nicely recorded by Joe Boyd.
Yeah, he's great.
And
is it done here in London? Or?
I think I'm not sure actually.
He's really good at just going where people are comfortable and recording them there, as far as I understand it. There's a couple of records of his that are sort of almost like recorded on porches.
Got brilliant clarinet playing. It's just, I love it. I love that record.
Yep,
I really recommend that too.
What's the artist's name? You can't remember?
No, I can't remember the name of the band. It's but you'll find it. Joe Boyd recording "Handkerchief," something about "Wave Your Handkerchief."
Okay.
The reason why I sort of half laughed when you said Albania was because I spent a holiday in Corfu, I think it was, with Leslie, and that was the place that people would swim from Albania across, and it was like I was thinking about waving, and then you could say this thing about the least you can do is wave your handkerchief or whatever, and it was just like when you said that, it was like, oh yeah, that feels like an Albanian experience, at least back then it did, if you know what I mean.
There's a picture of a sort of lady in traditional dress, like waving a handkerchief on the cover.
Yeah.
That's great. I was going to say really quick, Moses Boyd Exodus. He's a drummer I saw recently, a British drummer of jazz, but like you kind of described like the New York loft kind of vibe. I mean, he's great.
I listened to that album, and I wasn't that into it, but then the other day I heard one track off that. I was like, oh yeah, this is fucking good.
Is that the guy who played recently with Tony Allen?
I know.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I know Frank knows him. He's a really young black London drummer.
Yeah, there was this young. I saw a video of Tony Allen meets, and it was like, wow.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I've seen that as well.
A few months back at South by Southwest, the festival in Austin, Texas, there was a British jazz showcase with him and a few other people, all really young, and he was just phenomenal. I mean, solo drum set by himself for about 30 minutes, and just like had everyone captivated. It was really great.
The track I heard was Moses Boyd playing drums and a tenor player, another young tenor player.
Yeah.
Just drums and tenor, which isn't the format I would go for that often, but yeah, it's very, very good.
That's referencing late Coltrane, really.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again. It's been an honor to release you guys' music. Thanks for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you as well, and thank you for the opportunity to remaster it so nice. And
thank you for doing it right. It's important for us to do it right. And yes. Well, we look forward to seeing you guys in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
All right. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Sizzling in the frying pan. We had the TV, we had the armchair, we had the telephone, we had the sofa. My God, we got so far, only to leave solar. The last thing said the janitor.